Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Jamaica slips 2 places in latest press freedom rankings. Government minister welcomes increased penalties for murder. And later in sports, local coaches respond to Mount Pleasant FA facing possible charges for use of alleged ineligible players in Jamaica Premier League. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kerry-Ann Simpson. Here are the details. Jamaica has seen improvements in press freedom over the past 2 decades. A growing mistrust between the media and government officials is eroding institutional respect for the press. Its assessment comes as the country has slipped 2 places on the World Press Freedom Index, now ranking 26th out of 180 countries. Despite the decline, it remains the 2nd highest ranked Caribbean nation, behind Trinidad and Tobago, which climbed 6 places to 19th and now leads the region. The 23rd annual World Press Freedom Index was released by Reporters Without Borders to mark the May 3 observation of World Press Freedom Day. Norway retained its top position, while North Korea remained last at 180th. The National Integrity Action NIA is ramping up support for civil society groups in Jamaica. NIA's Principal Director Daniel Archer says the goal is to help these groups set up permanent offices and become long-term agents of change.
That NIA will play a role in this transformative initiative, improving communication of CSOs to strengthen democracy. We want to not just build a framework, but create a movement. And together we aim to collaborate on developing a comprehensive working paper that will shape our approach and create a dynamic secretariat.
The European Union's Aniceta Rodriguez Ruiz applauded the initiative, praising NIA's role in promoting democracy, human rights and transparency.
The NIA for its continued advocacy around democracy issues and its role as civil society agent for change in promoting human rights, notably through its contribution to the empowerment of right holders, awareness raising, and fostering accountability and transparency, which are so vital to the enjoyment of all human rights.
It's all part of a push to strengthen accountability and citizen empowerment across the island. One government official has welcomed the newly passed murder sentencing laws, describing them as a strong signal of the administration's commitment to tackling crime. Information Minister Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon says the tougher penalties prove that the government is serious about dealing with violent offenders and protecting public safety. Shamila Pullen reports.
Jamaica recorded 150 murders between January 1 and March 15 this year. This is about 70 fewer than the 228 during the same period in 2024. On Tuesday, the House of Representatives passed new legislation amending the country's murder sentencing laws. The changes introduce significantly longer mandatory minimum sentences for both capital and non-capital murder, marking one of the most substantial sentencing reforms in recent years. Speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing, Information Minister Dr. Dana Morris-Dixon says these reforms underscore the government's firm commitment to law and order.
There were amendments made to the Offences Against the Person Act, the Criminal Justice Administration Act, and the Child Care and Protection Act. These amendments represent a vital and deliberate response to the levels of violent crime in our society, particularly those involving the most heinous offense, which is murder.
Dr. Morris-Dixon says while the amendments preserve incentives for accused individuals to plead guilty, the resulting sentences will remain robust enough to deter serious crimes.
We know that we will still give that credit if you do plead guilty, but this term that is still served needs to be sufficiently long to serve as a disincentive for doing this. So the Prime Minister said this was a priority, and it is a priority, and we have done what we said we were going to do. No one can think that I can commit murder and I can go and cool out for a bit in jail and then come back out after 15 years or so and commit another murder. We are saying that is no longer the case.
The reforms follow growing public calls for tougher measures against violent criminals.
We're very serious about this. We're very serious about preserving life. We're very serious about the rights of the victims. And the victims are often voiceless in what happens. And so this is us saying to Jamaica, we hear the cries of all of the people who have been victims and their families have been victims to murder. And we are very much saying to Jamaica, we will not stand for it, and the penalties demonstrate that.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
Minister of Works Robert Morgan has provided an update on several bridges across the country that are being rehabilitated.
There's a priority bridge program which is funded by your tax dollars to the tune of $1.5 billion, which will include 7 bridges, including the Troy Bridge, which is $230 million, which is now 60% complete. We had some rains over the last several weeks on the border between Trelawney and Manchester, which would have slowed down the work. But the work has restarted. But the people do have access, as they have a footbridge, a temporary footbridge that we have put in place.
As it relates to other bridges, Mr. Morgan says studies have been completed as they enter the next phase.
The Spring Village Bridge in St. Catherine, which is another $250 million, that's 10% in progress. We're driving piles into the ground now to lay the foundation for that bridge. There was also in the news the Craig Mill Bridge, which is valued at $170 million. We're in the planning stage of that, but we are currently constructing a $30 million footbridge to give the people of Craig Mill access across the river.
There's a growing call for more inclusive education systems to support students with disabilities. That call came on Wednesday from the director of the Center for Disability Studies at the University of the West Indies, Professor Floyd Morris, who was addressing a seminar in Mandeville. O'Shane Masters reports.
Speaking at the Church Teachers College's Educational Assessment and Intervention Center, Professor Morris stressed that students with disabilities must have access to support systems to reach their full potential. He pointed to the ongoing challenges facing the students at all levels of the education system and emphasized the importance of fully implementing the provisions under the Disabilities Act. These include the presence of trained teachers, properly equipped support staff, access to modern technology, and modifications to school infrastructure, such as ramps, so students with disabilities can move independently.
I will be relentless in my pursuit, whether it be in government or opposition, to ensure that our education system becomes inclusive of persons with disabilities.
Professor Morris also raised concerns about the high cost of assistive technologies. While devices like iPhones offer a range of helpful applications for the disabled community, he questioned how many can actually afford them.
Because the data is suggesting that over 90% of these individuals in Jamaica are unemployed. And so, ways and means must be found to ensure that these individuals have access to these technologies.
Now, to bridge this gap, Professor Morris announced plans to collaborate with the Church Teachers College to provide training for parents of children with disabilities so they can better support their children's development at home and school. He says the aim is to empower families and ensure that no child is left behind due to lack of access or understanding. O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
Amid complaints about shortfalls in the country's healthcare sector, Mayor of Montego Bay Richard Vernon has called for more support from the private sector. Mr. Vernon made the call at the handing over ceremony at the Montego Bay Type C clinic, where state-owned company Petrojam donated an autoclave sterilizer machine.
I'm imploring all our private sector players to come on board, join Petrojam in the effort to ensure that we have better healthcare. And I'm happy that this investment is not just being made into healthcare, because many countries can provide healthcare. What makes it different is that we are investing in such a way that we can provide quality healthcare.
The Ministry of Health and Wellness is turning up the heat on HPV with a dose of determination and a jab at misinformation. This amid Vaccination Week in the Americas from April 26 to May 3. And we now take a break. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. To an earlier story, the Ministry of Health and Wellness is turning up the heat on HPV with a dose of determination and a jab at misinformation. This amid Vaccination Week in the Americas from April 26 to May 3. Sandy Williams reports.
The HPV vaccine program kicked off in Jamaica in 2017 with a school-based focus, and by 2019, coverage rates were inching up, reaching around 23 to 26%. Then came COVID-19, and the numbers flatlined into the single digits. Between the last 2 years, things have been heating up again. Dr. Julia Rowe Porter is director of the Family Health Unit in the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
We're still compiling our 2024 data, but essentially we're still in the single-digit range. However, we're seeing promising increases where we doubled our doses given between 2023 to 2024.
The HPV vaccine is free, and it's not just for girls anymore. Boys aged 9 to 14 can now get one simple dose as recommended. The Ministry of Health is reorganizing the program, which includes updating the immunization schedule.
We're also doing training, so we spent a lot of time in 2023 to 2024 retooling the program, where we did sensitization, we developed our public awareness material, we've done training in risk communication, and we are partnering with our private sector through the professional associations or pediatricians, gynecologists, family physicians.
A brand new chatbot launched on Wednesday is to give the public facts about the virus and the vaccine. Social media campaigns, partnerships with the private sector, and bold public awareness pushes are now in full swing. Dr. Rowe Porter laments many people have been reluctant to roll up their sleeves.
There's a general lack of awareness about HPV, which is human papillomavirus. It's actually the commonest infection of the reproductive tract. However, not many people know about it because it tends to be asymptomatic. I mean, it doesn't really cause symptoms like other sexually transmitted infections. And there are also myths surrounding the vaccine, given misinformation in the public space. And we believe also that the myths surrounding COVID vaccine during the pandemic would have affected not just HPV vaccination, but other childhood vaccines.
Experts say the HPV vaccine is one of the best tools in the fight against cervical cancer. Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
It's now time for the Business Minute.
Supreme Ventures has been given the green light to enter the bill payment market. The Bank of Jamaica recently approved the move, which will see the service being provided under the Evolve Bill Pay brand. According to Chief Innovation Officer at Supreme Ventures, Delroy Anderson, the company will be utilizing its vast lottery games network to provide the service. He says customers have 168 locations from which to access the bill payment service, with plans for that number to be increased to 304. Further afield, Apple CEO Tim Cook says tariffs could cost his company $900 million this quarter. Most iPhones are produced in China, which has been highly targeted by President Donald Trump's tariff policies. But the Trump administration announced in April smartphones were exempt from reciprocal tariffs on Chinese imports. That would reduce the total tariff rate from at least 145% to a minimum of 20%. Apple has shifted some of its iPhone production to India to help offset the costs. For the Business Minute, I'm Shane Masters.
Time now for the top stories from around the world. In the region, Kamala Persad Bissesa has been sworn in for the second time as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, promising a new era of compassion, fairness, decisive leadership and love following a resounding electoral victory for the United National Congress. The swearing-in ceremony was held Thursday at President's House in Port of Spain and officiated by President Christine Congolou. Attorney General-designate John Jeremy also took his oath of office. The rest of the cabinet will be sworn in today. On the international scene, the tariff loophole is now closed for Chinese imports worth $800 or less. That's due to executive action from President Donald Trump last month. Now, an affected item sent via the postal system carries a 120% duty or a $100 fee. On June 1st, the flat cost option rises to $200. An item shipped another way likely faces Trump's 145% tariff hike. Chinese e-commerce giant Shein and Temu say they raised prices a week ago to prepare for the loophole's end. Amazon says it considered showing how tariffs affect prices on its low-cost Amazon Haul site, but has backed off that idea. And those are the top regional and international stories. And we head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report.